We got a panel here. We're going to try and go pretty quickly because I know Greg, he has to leave in a bit. So quick intros. Again, my name is Tim Swanson. I do a lot of different work in this space. I do business development at a company called Melodic. And I do also do a lot of research. I recognize a few of your faces, either from debates or some good emails. So the three panels, we have Atif Nazir. He's founder of Block.io. We have Matthew Rue. He's co-founder at BlockCypher. And we have Greg Slepek. And he's the founder of the OK Turtles Foundation. So real quick, I just want to know a little bit about, since you guys taught some classes here, what were you kind of, quick minute thoughts, a couple minutes of what you thought of the students and the courses you guys taught, starting with software?
So, to be honest, coming in, we have, as companies in this space, we've spent almost a year just, trying to get things right and trying to figure out what the nuance is and all that. So coming in, we thought, this is complicated stuff. It's not, it's a complete paradigm shift. Nothing like this has ever existed before. And people that are coming in, most of them have no idea what's going on. This is going to be a tall order. And look at where we are 8 weeks later. I didn't expect it, and I'm really, really happy. The future of the blockchain is just, it's super bright, especially tonight.
Yeah, it'll be the same. The same feedback is that when I saw the whole program, I thought, well, it's going to be a little fast. Actually, one of my first remarks was maybe to extend the first part a little bit so that they would have more time. But everybody seems to have followed on really well and came up really great and cool projects and integrated the technology, understood what they could do with it, and then come up with some idea that made sense. So yeah, congratulations to all the graduates.
I'm really happy to see that this is happening. I think it's really great that the Blockchain University was put together, and I really enjoyed having a conversation with all of the students here. Everyone here seems very bright, and also interested in something that I'm also interested in, which is the concept of decentralization, which I think is great that so many people, so many really intelligent people are here working on this. So I'm just happy to be a part of it.
I got a mic right here. Quick show of hands. Who here is a person actually hoping to eventually find employment in the greater blockchain sphere? So for the audience, okay, that's about 15 people for those watching. And how many of you actually run a company or a fund or something like that that's looking to hire? Okay, so about 7 people, 8 people. You can come talk to me too. One of the companies I represent this. So question for Greg with OK Turtles, since I know you have to leave in a second. What is DNS Chain as a product that you guys have, and how does that help with, say, when you have hardware that's been backdoored or software that's been backdoored? How can OK Turtles and indeed DNS Chain help that?
Yeah, so DNS Chain is a project, not really a product. It's free and open source software, and the purpose of it is to secure online communications from man-in-the-middle attacks. It uses blockchain technology to do that, and it's blockchain agnostic, meaning it's happy to support any blockchain that can do key value mappings. That ability is what makes preventing man-in-the-middle attacks possible. When you have a blockchain, this public, secure, decentralized database, it has all the information that you need, public keys, and if you can securely distribute them, you can prevent the man-in-the-middle attack. How is that relevant to malware and backdoors? Well, we learned, for example, just today, or last night, that the CIA created a modified version of Xcode, the purpose of which was to insert backdoors into pretty much anything built with it, and keyloggers onto dev machines. There's a lot of similar software. There are things like package managers that distribute software. When developers need to use somebody else's code, they have to go across the internet and retrieve that code. how can they be sure that en route to them, that code is actually secure? How can they be sure whether when they download an application, they actually received what the developer intended for them to receive? By preventing man-in-the-middle attacks, you can mitigate a lot of opportunities for backdoor insertion. And so that's how DNS Chain can help.
Thank you. So I know that you guys aren't necessarily building products at the API companies you guys represent, but you have to deal with zero information. You have, both of you actually have a way of creating a trust of the network before 10 minutes, correct? Like you have a way of analyzing it. How does that actually work? Can you explain it to the audience how both of your systems work that way?
Okay, I'll explain ours and I'll let you after. So the way a normal Bitcoin node works is that it will accept a transaction, like validate the transaction, and then accept it, and then keep it around. If another transaction tries to spend the same money again, it will just refuse it. It will say that money has already been spent. You can't do it. So by measuring the ratio of the network that has one transaction versus the other, you can produce an assessment of how likely that transaction eventually has to predominate over the other and make it into the blockchain. So that's sort of what we do. We provide a live measurement of how a transaction propagates and how likely it is to make it into a block eventually. It's not correlated to how fast it's going to make it into a block, but how likely it is to make it into a block at some point. And that's kind of the gist of it.
Yeah, adding to what Matthew said, so just as a general idea, when you walk into a Starbucks or you walk in to get some food and you want to pay with Bitcoin, that's great that you have Bitcoin and you want to pay with it, but are you willing to wait 10, 20, maybe an hour before you get your food? That's not, it seems like it isn't built for retail transactions, right? So that's where this idea comes in, that we are going to measure how many of the nodes on the network agree that this transaction is okay, that it may make into, that it most probably will make it into a block, that is get confirmed by the people that are, or machines that are doing work on the network. So what Matthew was saying was a transaction goes into the network. If no one has validated the transaction yet, another transaction can come into the network and try to spend the same coins. That is called a double spend, and that is the problem that the blockchain tries to resolve. So so with this measurement of the confidence rating, how many nodes have actually agreed that this transaction is good and they are likely to reject anyone that tries to double spend these coins. This confidence rating, it reaches about 99%. About 99% of the nodes agree that a transaction is okay, and they will most likely reject a new transaction coming in. This happens in about 8 seconds, which is great. That's the amount of time it takes for me to take my credit card out of my pocket. I'm super slow with it, but still. And yeah, so all of a sudden, with tools like this, Bitcoin becomes a tool you can use in real life when you're paying for. I love hookah, so I'm going to pay for a hookah.
Okay, since we talked about apps in this class, you guys taught about these different types of dApps and so forth. Now, each one of you kind of runs a platform in a sense. What are some apps that you could like maybe build with DNS Chain or on top of it, or what are some popular apps that you guys have on your own platforms right now?
Sure. So we would really love to see people who are building really any kind of software that communicates across the internet to use DNS Chain to secure those communications. When you need to securely communicate across the internet, you have to get their public key. So you can use DNS Chain, the connection to DNS Chain, and you can pick you can pick a DNS Chain server that you personally run, or you can pick multiple independent DNS Chain servers. And actually, when you do that, you increase the likelihood that you will get that you will know what the correct public key is. So that's the main goal of DNS Chain, is to secure all online communications, and you can help with that by using it in your apps.
Yeah, so for API and web services, there's a wide variety of companies that are being built and products that are being built. So you can see sort of the imagination of the project that you've seen today. It goes everywhere and kind of worldwide. So you have kind of the classic one, like the merchant services, the exchanges, the wallets. So that's kind of the more common. And then you have like location-based services, you have games, you have payment gateways.
Anything specific that block sizes that you...
So, so all of those are actually, like, we have customers in every single like several customers in most of those categories actually. And like the latest one, for example, like I can give an example, is AppChain just came live right before last weekend with a tipping button on their website, the micropayment button. So that's using our API, it's using our microtransaction API, which is basically a way to make very small Bitcoin transactions possible by sort of minimizing the fees, and because we have the mechanism we were just talking about with Atif to sort of guarantee your transaction, then we can minimize the fees, and even if the transaction is not mined right away, we can say it's fine. The transaction will even eventually make it. So that would be maybe the latest example, which allows like online tipping really easily. So I don't know if you've ever been on AppChain or ever tried AppChain. It's really easy to tip there. Just tip, and basically the transaction goes live, and you can see on the blockchain. So it would maybe one of the latest.
Yeah, so people are trying to figure out how to reimagine existing websites and services and just general communications between people and non-people. With
Pretty broad.
with the blockchain, right? So we have people that are building an equivalent of Quora that uses Bitcoin and Dogecoin to tip on the site and reward people, like Stack Exchange, except with Stack Exchange a check mark and reputation is your reward. With this, it's an actual tip that is your reward. It's called BitAnswers, and then you have another site like this, which is Twitch that uses Bitcoin. It's called BitGamer.tv. So you go in there, and you pay people to play a game while you watch. Like that. Yeah. Ideas like this, we're just starting. And then there's the classical peer-to-peer exchanges and wallets and all that. Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, how many of you guys actually do tipping actively? Anyone here tippers? Who here runs an army of sock puppets that also tip? No one from Change Shippers? So okay, since we're talking about tipping and which costs a transaction fee of some kind, Matthew and I were talking previously about block sizes and how now there's a kind of debate with how should we increase the block size on Bitcoin from 1 meg to 20 meg or so forth. How about before we get into what Peter Todd did with replace by fee, that scorched earth policy, what is your own view on this size increase, and what do you think is actually going to take place? Not necessarily what you want to have take place.
Sorry, that's not my expertise.
Well, so I know just the guy. He wrote like a long post, really thoughtful post about it. His name is Tim Johnson. I don't know if you know him. So yeah, block sizes. So the issue, just to frame it a little bit, is that a block size is 1 megabyte, and transactions having some size of their own, there are only a certain number of transactions you can fit in every block, which means that there's sort of a hard limit in the number of transactions you can issue per 10 minutes, because that's the average time of a block. So there's the big push right now that's being done by the Bitcoin Foundation chief scientist to increase that size over 1 megabyte to whatever. So there's two arguments on both sides. Two main, I guess. One is that it's an arbitrary limit, so why not increase it? The argument on the other side is by limiting the number of transactions you can do by a given amount of time, you actually enforce the creation of a fee market. Like if you want the transaction to make it into a block, you will have to pay a little more fees, and the creation of a fee market is eventually going to be necessary. Otherwise, miners are not going to survive because their reward is going down with time. So at some point, there will not be any reward, or the reward will be very small, and at that point, fees will have to take over. And enforcing a limit on the block size is a way to get to that earlier rather than later. So that's kind of the two sides of the coin, if I can say that. My personal take is that the way Bitcoin and blockchain works, the miners are free to do whatever they want. So even if the block size is 10 gigabytes, the miners can still produce blocks that are 50K if they want to. So after that, the fee market is just to be made by the miners themselves and not by some kind of arbitrary limit that's set in the software. Actually, that limit set in the software is kind of a hindrance because it's been kind of a practice to try to get close to that. So why get close to that rather than something else, or what get lower or what get higher? So yeah, that's kind of my take on it.
So, just so we're all on the same page. So what happens when you send a transaction into the Bitcoin network is a lot of other machines will see it and they will do some work and they will try to validate a group of transactions that make it into a block. So it's like a bucket of transactions every 10 minutes. That size of the transaction is limited to 1 megabyte, which is, it's a limited number of transactions. Let's say 1,000 transactions that can be validated and figure into a block. Why does that limit exist? Well, that limit was arbitrary in the beginning, but then it became a central part of the way the Bitcoin blockchain works, because right now we are pushing, every 10 minutes we are pushing the limit on that block size. We're like, no, we're transacting more on the blockchain. So, we want our transactions to get validated faster. Well, that's not happening. They're getting validated an hour or 2 hours later because every single bucket is full and your transaction came in and you didn't want to pay a good fee. So you got relegated to 2 hours later. Now the guy who was trying to pay for coffee with Bitcoin, he's waiting 2 hours, and I think he just ends up with cash. So yes, increasing the block size, amazing. It'll help a lot of people. It will also make infrastructure pretty costly for a lot of people. In the short run, increasing the block size will drive the dorm room nodes on Bitcoin that we have today. They will kind of die out. It will be more institutional infrastructure that'll start to play. But in the midterm, so there's the short term, there's the midterm, there's the long term. In the midterm, more and more tools will get developed where they won't need to actually download the entire blockchain. And you can see this happen with the current Bitcoin reference client, right? They're trying to move more and more towards just get a whiff of the blockchain. Yeah, it smells right. I don't need to actually hold it and hug it.
It's an interesting too much hookah.
Too much hookah. So yeah, in the short run, it's bad, but it's needed. We need it.
If I can add just one more little thing is that there's also, so having more transaction is good, right? For the whole ecosystem is good. It shows that the system is alive and well, that it can work at scale, and that also by having more transactions, if you can fit more of them in a block, then you get more fees, and that's also good for the miners, and that's good for the security of Bitcoin. So having more transaction is a good thing, and that's where we want to go if we want to go anywhere near other payment system. To get there, well, it's a complicated path. It's software optimization. Software optimization is usually dirty work, and it's a pain, and it's going to be painful. A lot of people are going to say, oh no, I don't want it, it's dirty. But it's kind of necessary, and there's a lot of solutions for that. Several have been proposed to just avoid downloading the transaction multiple times, not requesting transactions that you have already, increasing the block size, compression, pruning the blockchain. There's a lot of stuff that's possible. So it's not like anytime somebody tell you about Bitcoin can scale, just tell them that's yes, it can. It's just that there's not been a lot of effort so far. And just putting more transactions on the blockchain helps you going in that direction.
So I just want to add a little note of caution here, that if Bitcoin takes steps to increase the number of transactions that the network is processing, and whatever those steps are, it makes it difficult for the average user to run Bitcoin. What will happen is that the entire Bitcoin network will converge on a centralized network, and then Bitcoin will have effectively failed at its mission of decentralizing payments. So hopefully they are aware of that and will figure out how to increase transaction volume without centralizing the network, because we don't want to end up back where we started.
Sure, yeah, so some stats on that. So a year ago, the total nodes, the Bitcoin Foundation runs it's called Git address block. They run the
BitNode.
Yeah, BitNodes, okay. So basically, the amount of nodes out there, active nodes, have divided in half year on year. And I was just looking at it today. If you look at the clients, for example, when they have upgraded, so the most recent Bitcoin Core release was 0.10, and we've had I believe it's up to about 20% of all nodes have upgraded to that, but less than half of that is miners. So there's like an incentive for miners not to necessarily upgrade. What in your quick? We have just a minute each. How can you see as a way to motivate miners to potentially get on board with what you guys talked about, bigger block sizes and so forth?
More money. If there's more transactions, more fees, more money for the miner, I guess that would be probably the best incentive for them. I mean, that's basically the main incentive for mining in the first place.
So the thing with any costly operation is it follows a power law. So if you think of a curve like going up like this, and this is no, it's going like whatever. So the less you have to pay for a service, the more of those units you will sell, right? Right now, if you go to the new Bitcoin reference client, and if you want to, they have a formula in there that suggests the fee that you should pay if you want your transaction to get into the next block, roughly the next block, and that fee is outrageous. That fee is about 0.04 or 0.05 Bitcoin. That formula needs tweaking, but just understand that if the block size doesn't change, we're making fewer transactions on the network, and because of that, we are limiting adoption of the blockchain.